you guys seen this picture going around lately? Obviously this kind of stuff comes up in menswear circles, but I've seen even my non-menswear friends posting it around, and does a pretty good job of describing the importance of clothing and why this stuff matters. What's funny to me is that somehow people think that Cary Grant was more natural in his style, or there was less of a concern, versus this other guy who, this is obviously super exaggerated because it's for a men's fashion show, and fashion shows by themselves are supposed to be super exaggerated. And don't get me wrong, this is awful, and there's nothing even remotely masculine about what this other guy is wearing. But the same level of concern for his style is there, as it was for Cary Grant or for guys in the 50s. And it's funny because when I see other guys who are non-menswear guys post this stuff, it always comes back to this kind of idealized time of the 1950s. Now, the problem with trying to dress that way is that you look like I'm not the first person to use this term, but you look like you're LARPing masculinity. Now, if you don't know what LARPing is, that's live action role play. That's the guys who, they go out to a city park and they have swords and axes wrapped up in duct tape, and they wear this elaborate armor.
Lightning bolt! Sleep! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Sleep! Lightning bolt!
And they pretend to be their favorite video game characters, and there's all these elaborate rules, and it's kind of wild. But they're pretending to be warriors. And for a lot of guys, especially guys who get into the self-improvement sphere, they start reading sites like Art of Manliness, Order of Man, they read my stuff. They start to think that somehow if I dress like I'm in the 1950s, if I have the manners of the men who were like they were in the 1950s, then that's what it is to be a real man. The problem with that is they're just outward manifestations that oftentimes don't coincide with inward expressions of self. A lot of these guys who they LARP this masculinity stuff, they really, from the idea of practical, applicable masculinity or manhood, it doesn't apply at all. They're guys who they're weak-willed, they're soft, they are effeminate, and they don't typify what Jack Donovan calls the four tactical virtues. These guys don't exemplify courage, strength, mastery, and honor. And if you don't typify those things, or if you're at least not trying to build upon those four tactical virtues, because I'll be the first one to admit that in a lot of realms, I'm not as courageous as I should be, I'm certainly not as strong as I should be, I'm not as masterful, nor am I as honorable. But those are all things that I'm consciously trying to develop. And so my clothing can represent me in a way that shows those masculine tactical virtues without making me look like I'm just wearing a costume. Because if you try to dress like Cary Grant did, then it's just a costume, and your masculinity just becomes a costume. A lot of guys, they just think, well, okay, I'm just gonna dress this way, and that's all I have to do. And so there's this cognitive dissonance that doesn't work. We talked about that a little bit in a previous video talking about the contrast principle. At the same time, there are other guys who they start to get more self-improvement minded. They decide that they're, I've hit rock bottom and I'm finally going to improve my life. And a lot of times they think that I need to focus on one method of self-improvement to the exclusion of others. I actually get this a lot from potential clients who reach out and they say, I would love to do your coaching, I would love to take one of your courses, but I need to get X, Y, or Z dialed in first. And self-improvement is not a zero-sum game. It's not the type of thing where you have to focus on A to the complete exclusion of B. You can focus on a lot of these things and build them up together as you go. And dressing well is a way to help you stay more dialed and more focused in these other areas of self-improvement, especially because it's this cognitive dissonance again. Because if you dress really well, but you're a piece of garbage, then that doesn't work, and you look like you're either being worn by your clothes, or you're a con man, or you decide that you're not going to dress as well and you go back to what you're used to. At the same time, if you start to really improve, but you don't dress very well, then a lot of people won't give you the time of day or the chance to prove yourself that you're actually up here on this level. And so this ends up being a stumbling block or a hindrance that in a way actually can impede your ability to continue to improve yourself, improve your network, improve your relationships even further. Whereas if you bring them both up together and you don't let either one get too far apart from the other, then there's not this dissonance. Things work in conjunction with each other, and the tide continues to rise both ways. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be wearing a suit. That doesn't mean that you have to be dressing like Cary Grant. We've talked about this with Tribe. We've talked about this with other variables. What you need to be doing is dressing in a way that communicates who you are and what your goals are. You need to be improving yourself so that who you are is in line with what your goals are, and you need to be communicating that to the rest of the world, to the rest of your tribe, in a way that you can with your clothing and your aesthetics. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. But if you see any holes in that reasoning, if you see any holes in that logic, leave me a comment below. To me, I think that this can be a really pretty cool concept, and it's a good way to just kind of check myself. Because a lot of times I do this. I'm way too style and not enough self-improvement. But at other times I've been too self-improvement and not enough style. There needs to be a balance there. Hope you liked the video. Leave it a thumbs up. I'll catch you guys next time.